Doshin the Giant, Tinkling Toddler Liberation Front Assemble, as the name suggests, is a game all about being a toddler and pissing on things. It's the only thing you can do in the game, and your only means of interacting with the world around you. You wee on women to talk to them, tinkle on toddlers to befriend them, and pee to construct pavilions. Of course, the game never explicitly says that it's urine, instead referring to this mysterious heart-shaped liquid your character produces from their crotch as Chico, but it's about as explicit and obvious as they could be without outright saying it. Chico is a made-up word, but sounds similar to Chibiko, which is Japanese for toddler, and to Oshiko, which is a childish way of saying peeing. To save the game, you have to Chico into a toilet, or try to anyway, not the worst aim a public bathroom has been subjected to. As you play, your Chico meter fills up, and if you let it go all the way, your character wakes up from their dream having wet the bed. Google Translate also has no idea what to do with the word Chico, but can figure out it relates to the crotch somehow, producing some of the worst sentences you have ever read in your entire life if you try and put them into English. It's a bizarre game, needless to say, but going past the PP, is that all there is to it? What else do you do apart from pee? Join me on my journey through this mysterious N64 game. Kyojin no Doshin, Kaiho Sensen Chibiko Chico Daishugo, or as it's come to be known as on the English-speaking web, Tinkling Toddler Liberation Front, was released in 2000 for the N64 DD, the N64's failed equivalent of the Famicom Disk System that never made it out of Japan. It's an expansion for Doshin the Giant that had released on the 64 DD a few months prior. I covered that game extensively in my previous video, but don't worry if you haven't seen it, I've written this one to work as a standalone piece. For now, all you need to know is that Doshin the Giant is a god game where you play as a giant called Doshin. Let me know if I'm going too fast. Your goal in it is to help members of different tribes build their villages, until they're large enough to construct a monument. Build all 16 of them, and you beat the game. It's a good game, but with some rough edges and mechanics I don't enjoy that much. The GameCube remake, however, is one of my favourite games of all time. Though calling this game an expansion feels a bit odd, as unlike really any expansion I can think of, it doesn't add anything new to the original game. The only other expansion disc on the 64 DD is for F-Zero X, and that includes new tracks, and lets you create custom tracks and ships. Tinkling Toddler Liberation Front, on the other hand, is essentially its own game, which makes it sound like it would be a standalone expansion, along the same lines as Sonic and Knuckles. But it isn't standalone, and will not launch unless you also have Doshin, and how far you can progress in it is tied to what you've done in Doshin as well. On that note, it's worth pointing out that a lot of times online you might see this expansion referred to as Doshin the Giant 2. I imagine most of that is because no one wants to keep having to say Doshin the Giant, Tinkling Toddler Liberation Front Assemble, over and over again when talking about it, a goal I completely sympathise with, having written this video trying to avoid saying its full name as much as possible. The first game also refers to itself as Doshin the Giant 1, so it's not hard to see why calling the expansion Doshin the Giant 2 caught on, though as far as I can tell, the name Doshin the Giant 2 never actually appears in-game. Rather than playing as the titular giant, you are a toddler, a massive fan of Doshin the Giant, playing the game on your suspiciously cube-shaped console. You're told to go to bed by your mum, and when you do, you're sucked away into a dream. Doshin the Giant has been imprisoned, put in chains and on display at the Doshin Expo of 1996. As a fan of Doshin, you of course need to free him, though that isn't your only objective. Most of your time will be spent building the pavilions dotted around the expo, each corresponding to a monument you have to build in Doshin the Giant. And I gotta say, I really dig the presentation this game goes for, even if the use of 2D sprites showcases the N64's capabilities at its very worst, constantly zooming in way too far, showing its complete ass with everything being incredibly blurry. But under that blur, I think this game has vibes, nailing its dreamlike atmosphere. The dark nighttime sky, filled with floodlights and fireworks, celebrating the capture of Doshin. The way every character in the game is just a single colour silhouette, like you can't quite remember who they are once you wake up. The pavilions are these bizarre, outlandish buildings which, again, are sadly just 2D cutouts, but create a cool landscape to explore once you start building them. I would have loved to have been able to see these in 3D like the monuments in the main game, but considering this can barely hold a steady frame rate as is, there's probably a good reason they're just 2D. It's a strange mix of being really ugly to look at, but still enjoying what it's got going on, and that is complemented nicely by the music. While there's only a handful of songs, they're all great. From the upbeat music that plays as you surround Doshin's cage, to the more playful song for when you're circling the expo kinda like a merry-go-round, and the calmer, soothing choir for when you're hanging around the outskirts. Yeah, that's all the songs. There's only 3 of them really, but I like them and never got tired of hearing them at least. To start building a pavilion, you walk up to one of the construction sites marked with a billboard and press Z to piss on it with your apparently incredibly acidic urine, burning a hole into it that your character can walk through. It will then ask you to insert Doshin the Giant, with the most terrifying disc swap screen I've ever seen in a video game, with a bright red siren filling the screen as it blares an alarm at you. For a moment, it was like I was transported to one of those over-the-top anti-piracy creepypastas, like, oh shit, Nintendo's coming for me, because they know I didn't spend £2,500 for a legit copy of this game. It checks if you've built the correct monument in Doshin, and will then ask you to reinsert the expansion disc. Then a pavilion will rise out of the ground, and a giant woman appears next to it. They're called the Queen Companions, and from what I can gather they're meant to be like booth babes, though I'm not sure if there are lore implications to them being 20 feet tall. She'll give you a task that you need to complete in Doshin the Giant, and will ask you to reinsert its disc. Restart the console, do the task, save and quit, reinsert the expansion disc again, restart the console again, and then the giant lady will ask you if you did the task. You say yes, and she asks you to insert Doshin the Giant for a 3rd time to check that you actually did it. You do that, she confirms that you did, and then tells you to reinsert the expansion pack again, and after all of that, 6 disc changes later, your reward is a short snippet of an animation called More Than Giant. Split into 17, roughly 30-second long parts, you'll need to complete a task at every pavilion to watch the entire black and white 160 by 120 resolution animation. There are Sega CD FMVs with higher resolutions than this. So just to emphasise, with 6 disc changes at every pavilion, that's 102 times you're going to have to swap discs to watch the entire animation. It's tedious enough on an emulator, I can only imagine what it was like having to constantly get up to swap them on actual hardware. It feels like there must be a better way they could have handled this, but I think that if there was, they probably would have done it. I can't imagine swapping discs over 100 times was their preferred option, but it still would have been nice if it could have been reduced somehow. Like if it could check for multiple monuments in Doshin at once rather than one at a time, or somehow tell the expansion that you did the task when you return, rather than having to check it once you're back there. It's an unfortunate outcome of making a disc-based add-on for a game that is already on the disk drive. It can't work as seamlessly as F-Zero, where the main game is on cartridge and the expansion is on disc. No swapping between the two required, they both work at the same time. I just can't help but think of like an ideal world where we could have had some weird reverse of that, where the expansion was instead released on cartridge. Or Doshin could have released on some bizarro disc that had a pass-through similar to Sonic & Knuckles, just to get really weird with it. At this point, I have to mention the IGN walkthrough for this game, which not only translates all the tasks you need to do for the pavilions, but also every bit of dialogue, as well as some helpful extracts from the manual. I genuinely do not think I could have played this all the way through without it. Though, whether or not I should be thankful for that, I'm not sure, considering that the jobs the giant ladies give you are the most boring, unengaging filler tasks you could possibly think of. Just saying a few examples would not do it justice. I need to prove to you that there is nothing worthwhile this game asks you to do, so I'm gonna say all 17 of them. The first pavilion is a freebie for just having started a save file in Doshin, and then we have stand underwater for 40 seconds, destroy a building and wait for the day to end to hear Doshin cry, destroy 15 buildings, but this time hearing him cry doesn't matter. Pick up a person 25 times. Pick up a tree 50 times. Collect 100 hearts. Jump 200 times. Grow larger 8 times. Open a box. Fall over. Stop yourself from falling over. Struggle to pick something up. Step on 4 people. Remove trees to create wasteland. Raise land out of the ocean. And finally, walk off the edge of the map. And if hearing me read them all like that was boring, imagine what it was like actually having to do them all. Especially when some of them need you to complete a in-game day for it to count, so you'll finish a task that takes 5 seconds to do and have to wait 30 minutes for the day to end to lock it in. It's definitely an expansion that makes more sense to play alongside a fresh save of Doshin, so you could do these boring tasks while playing the game that is actually fun. Some of them would be pretty easy to do just by accident in standard gameplay after all, but knowing that I needed all monuments built to beat it, and knowing that it came out a few months after Doshin, I assumed, being an expansion, that it was meant for those people who had already beaten the base game. So even though I did actually start a new playthrough of Doshin just for this video, I didn't bother doing anything relating to the expansion until I had already beaten it. Either way though, it wouldn't have made any of these tasks actually fun to complete. There's no getting around the fact that asking someone to jump 200 times is going to be boring no matter how or when you choose to do it. So if you're wondering at this point why they made the game like this, so was I. It's almost like the tasks it gives you were deliberately chosen to make you miserable doing them. And that's because they are. It's deliberate. The manual says as such, that the expansion was made to transform the fun of Doshin the Giant and turn it into a game that makes you suffer. And well, I can't say they didn't achieve what they set out to do there. I was definitely suffering doing some of these, but why would you design a game to make the person playing it suffer in the first place? Well, the manual says that you can't experience the joy of appreciating movies without suffering, and, you know, that's not entirely out of line with the design of the director's previous games. They deliberately included moments of boredom and tension. The cavemen in Tale of the Sun will randomly fall asleep on you, and you just have to wait for them to wake up. Doshin starts every day with an incredibly slow walking speed. These moments were there to add tension to the games, creating a contrast with the satisfying parts and making it even more satisfying when you get to them, so you feel the release of that tension. Walking slowly in Doshin sucks, but that makes reaching the villagers, helping them, and collecting hearts to grow larger, thus increasing your walking speed, feel more gratifying. Waiting for the caveman to wake up is annoying, especially when you're halfway through hunting an animal, but that makes waking up and finally getting to bash them in with your stick feel more cathartic. So, is this a continuation of that theme? Like, movies can totally cheer you up when you're feeling down, and there are definitely games I've played where the gameplay is my least favourite aspect of them, the cutscenes and story being what really drives me to beat them. And there are loads of games that have deliberately annoying, repetitive segments that aren't meant to be enjoyable, but those are just small segments in larger games that offer more emotions than just making you miserable. And those segments often serve a narrative purpose, being used for comedic gags, to make the player feel lost and overwhelmed, or to deter them from going down a certain route. But I don't think it works here, where suffering is the only thing the game can offer you, and its only purpose is to make you enjoy the animations more. The value proposition is completely off. Like, they're cute, I like them, but it's not like it's sitting you down to watch Akira or Golden Age Simpsons or something. They're nowhere near enough to offset the 10 minutes of boredom you had to endure to watch it for only barely 30 seconds. There'd really have to be something special. It'd be like if Desert Bus showed you a 30-second long cartoon every 40 miles you drove. And while I wish I could find out more about this concept and the development of this game, I can't find any interviews with the director about it. Just a passing mention that he had more ideas for Doshin on the 64DD. I'm sure somewhere there must be something, but if it's been translated into English, I haven't found it myself, as much as I would love to know where any of the ideas of this game came from. So that's the first objective, build all the pavilions to watch all of More Than Giant. But you might have noticed that outside of peeing on billboards, the tinkling part of Tinkling Toddler Liberation Front has been somewhat absent so far. So where does the piss fit into this? Well, it has to do with freeing Doshin from prison, which, as you could have probably guessed, involves peeing on him. As he absorbs your heart-shaped piss stream, he grows larger. The amount of Chico you need to make him grow increases every time he does, and after getting bigger 4 times, he breaks free, and he's wearing a gimp mask now. I don't know why he's wearing a gimp mask, he's just wearing a gimp mask now. Okay, cool. Technically, you can completely ignore building all the pavilions and just head straight to Doshin and let loose on him, but you'd be at it for a very long time. The IGN guide says it would take about 10 hours of constant pissing to free him if you go at it alone. It's the Breath of the Wild of toddler piss games. You can head straight to the end as soon as you start, but it's gonna be difficult. To make it easier, you're gonna need to recruit some help. After building some of the pavilions, other small children will appear around the expo, and by talking to them you can get them to join your team. And by talking to them, I mean peeing on them until they literally fall to their knees, begging you to stop. You can have up to 6 other toddlers in your team who will join in with peeing whenever you need their help. There are also rival teams who can get in your way, who you have to beat in literal pissing competitions. Having a full team is essential for freeing Doshin as far as I'm concerned, because even though it makes it go 7 times faster, it still takes a stupidly long amount of time. The last stage alone of freeing Doshin took 30 minutes of non-stop peeing to free him. I can't imagine doing this for 10 hours. And it's not like you can just tie an elastic band around your controller to keep the Z button held down while you do something else. If you run dry, holding Z won't do anything and let the Chico meter fill too high up, you'll wet the bed and lose your progress. You really need to be present the entire time. In the end, I was sat there for nearly 2 hours, waiting for that bar to fill up so I could start peeing on Doshin, over and over and over again. I guess given the game that it is, I shouldn't be surprised it took this long. It does seem designed to waste as much of your time as possible to make you suffer, but holy shit, man. I honestly wouldn't have bothered if it wasn't for how much I wanted to see the final cutscene, which is genuinely the only reason this video exists. Originally, I was just going to bring up this expansion briefly at the end of my previous video. Check it out a little, enough to get a vibe for what it was, but not commit to a full playthrough or anything, mostly just to acknowledge its existence as a weird forgotten oddity. But after reading a description of the ending on Wikipedia, I knew that I would have no choice but to play the entire thing to see it for myself, ballooning what was originally going to be like a paragraph or two into what you've been watching now. After Doshin is released, he will start destroying the entire place, flooding it with yellow fluid from his belly button. Like, the ending of the game is Doshin flooding the world with his piss? That can't possibly be real, can it? Here's what I thought when starting the game, and 8 hours later, here's my genuine live reaction to the ending. Oh my god. What the fuck? Oh my god, I thought it was exaggerating. Oh my god, no. Oh my god, that's so much more graphic than I was expecting. I really don't know what else to say. It is so much more visceral than I ever imagined it could have been. After Doshin floods the expo, it cuts back to the real world where your mum is having to hang out your bedsheets, presumably from the biggest piss you've done in your entire life. And then Doshin appears, and then a queen companion appears, and then you fall down a hole. Needless to say, Tinkling Toddler Liberation Front Assemble isn't really a game for me, but that's really no surprise. Sold exclusively through the 64DD's online subscription service, which was discontinued less than a year after this game's release date, it was only sold for a very limited amount of time to a very limited number of people, which is why it costs so much nowadays. It was made for such a niche audience of Japanese Doshin the Giant superfans 26 years ago. I don't think it's a huge surprise that I wouldn't mesh with it all that much, especially when so much of it is inaccessible to me as someone who can't understand Japanese. Like, I'd love to know what all the dialogue in this game means, and there's some backstory in the dream that sounds interesting about this, like, evil corporation that has imprisoned Doshin and hired biker gangs to guard him, and even though the IGN walkthrough does translate it all, it's a very literal translation. A lot of the meaning is kind of lost in the process. Not that I'm saying that to sound unappreciative, I'm so thankful this guide exists, but it is how it is. The dialogue just doesn't come across very well this way. Saying all this out loud though, it's very funny that this expansion was made for the most hardcore of Doshin the Giant fans, and was seemingly made with the sole intent of making them miserable. Nowadays, a lot of the incentives to play this game aren't really there anymore. You can get a feel for the atmosphere by just watching a video of it, and you can easily listen to the soundtrack online. More Than Giant was released on VHS and has since been uploaded to YouTube, in way higher quality than the 64DD was capable of showing. It even has a really cool Doshin the Giant themed rap. If you're looking for a game to make you miserable though, I guess Tinkling Toddler Liberation Front has your back. I can definitely say it achieved its goal there. It's always been a mysterious, almost inscrutable game to me, ever since watching Hard for Games cover it so many years ago, and I'm still glad I got to experience it for myself and figure out what it is, even if what it is something I didn't really vibe with all that much. That's fine. A strange chapter in Doshin the Giant's very brief history, with nothing in the expansion making it over to Doshin's GameCube remake. It's very funny to think though that this game wouldn't exist without Nintendo funding its development through Marigold Management, but I'll have more to say about them in part 3 of this series, where we're gonna check out all of the other cool and unique games they helped fund, in an effort to drum up third-party support for the struggling N64.